You're listening to the Phillip Jordan Show, talking SEC football and beyond.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Phillip Jordan Show right here on my YouTube channel, the Phillip Jordan YouTube channel. I am Phillip Jordan, in studio host and producer of Nothing Was Football on 96.9, the legend and writer for Last Word on college football. It is Tuesday. That means I am going to be joined by Coach Max Howell on the show today. We will talk about Georgia making a statement against their win over Tennessee. Did some people forget who the Georgia Bulldogs were? I think they reminded everybody this past Saturday. LSU knocking off Alabama. We will talk about the energy, the atmosphere, the enthusiasm Carnell Williams brought to the Auburn Tigers sideline, and much, much more with Coach Max Howell on the show today. And also, SEC basketball season has arrived. We will talk about the open tonight. I'll watch the Auburn George Mason game. I'll give my thoughts on that, and we'll go over all the games that happened in the SEC on Monday night, and I'm going to give some opening thoughts on what I thought on the SEC and college football as a whole over this past weekend. But before we do all that, let you guys know you can find me in the podcast. You can find me on social media at PJordanSEC. Podcast is available on all your favorite podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please follow, rate, and review. Leave a review. I will read it on a future edition of the show. If you're watching here right now on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button, hit the bell for all notifications, and please leave a comment on a video, and I'll read that on a future edition of the show. You can always email me at sportstalkphillipjordan@gmail.com. Now, before we get into my conversation with Coach Max Howell, I want to take a moment. This is very, very important for everybody watching and listening at this current moment. And it's something I've been looking forward to doing since around 11 o'clock on Saturday night. Ha! I told y'all. I told anybody that will listen before this season started that Brian Kelly is the third best coach in the SEC. I put that rankings up on Twitter, both on P. Jordan SEC and then on the Talking SEC Twitter accounts. Put it on there. I had Saban number 1, Kirby Smart number 2, Smart number 2, and I had Brian Kelly's number 3. And so many people came after me for this. So many people. They said, oh, you're just looking for attention. You know, this is a hot take. How are you going to put a guy who's never won a national championship ahead of a guy who has in Jimbo Fisher, the 3-6 Jimbo Fisher? And I've always called him 8-4 football coach without Jameis Winston. Yeah, that Jimbo Fisher. Saturday night, Brian Kelly got his first ever victory over Nick Saban. I just want to pause for a second. Let you guys soak this in. Now, not everybody was against me. Some people were kind of like, wait and see. But I had a lot of people that laughed and ridiculed me on social media over this. And I'm just going to say, after Saturday night, I am justified with my ranking. And actually, no, we're not going to do that. That's a postseason conversation. Brian Kelly outcoached Nick Saban Saturday night. He did. Nick Saban's been outcoached a few times this year, actually. Steve Sarkisian got him. I think Jimbo Fisher outcoached him, even though he lost that one. Josh Heupel, he outcoached Nick Saban, and now Brian Kelly. And everybody did not think Brian Kelly could do what he's doing now. Look, did I think they would do this year? No. I thought year 1, maybe go 8-4, show some promise. And then next year, big things or take another step. But this team has gotten better since the season has started. They're in, obviously, in the driver's seat when it comes to the SEC West. They've already beat Ole Miss. They got Alabama. Just take care of business against Arkansas and Texas A&M. You're going to Atlanta. Now, does anybody think they're going to beat Georgia? That's what Georgia just did to Tennessee. Probably not. But you've got to give this guy some credit with what Brian Kelly has done. And where this roster was when he got there, I mean, so many players have left the program. He went to the portal. He got players. I mean, what they have done with Jaden Daniels is amazing. He has made a transformation throughout this entire season as Jaden Daniels. Because when I saw him play Florida State that first game, in the first couple of weeks, he was a one-read and run quarterback, in my opinion. He was kind of quarterback. If his first read was not available, he took off. I didn't think he was a quarterback that could read a defense. He's improved in that. He's really playing well from a passing standpoint, and now the way they're using him in the run game, tremendous. And defensively, I mean, you got Harold Perkins over there on defense. That kid right there is a star already. I just can't imagine how good he's going to be when he leaves LSU. Brian, I've said this before, and I'm going to say this again. LSU's going to win a national championship with Brian Kelly as their head coach. And because, look, they won one with Les Miles and Ed Orgeron. Those two were not structured like Brian Kelly. These were two coaches that, I mean, let's say what it is. There was chaos around them a lot. And they won national championships at LSU. They haven't had a structured, button-up style team, style coach since Nick Saban. And now Brian Kelly just beat Nick Saban. And this is why Brian Kelly came to LSU, was to do things. And now he's got better talent. Now he's got the ability to beat Nick Saban. And on the Alabama side of things, this is their second loss. Uncharted territory for Alabama and the Crimson Tide. And where do they go from here? It'll be quite interesting because they're not used to being in this spot. I mean, this is a program that's not used to having two losses before Thanksgiving. The last time they had two losses in a regular season, 2019, but that second loss came against Auburn in the Iron Bowl at the end of the season. They were still holding out hope they could get into the playoff if they beat Auburn that day. That was without Tua. Mac Jones was making one of his first starts. That wasn't his first start, one of his first starts. Before that, when's the last time Alabama had two losses in the regular season? 2010. And that's the last time they've had two losses before Thanksgiving. That year, of course, they got upset by South Carolina. LSU beat them, and then Auburn beat them in the Iron Bowl day after Thanksgiving to give them 3 losses. And now Alabama has to go to Ole Miss this Saturday. Now, going into the LSU game, I picked Alabama to win this past Saturday. We all know that. You check me out here on YouTube. You guys know I did that. But now looking at the Ole Miss game, and I saw the way LSU was able to run with Jaden Daniels. Now, Jackson Dart's not Jaden Daniels from a running talent standpoint, but Lane Kiffin will run him, and they're going to throw the ball. And they're going to run the ball with the other guys. Where's Alabama going to be at? What's their motivation? What's their mindset going to be like on Saturday when they play Ole Miss? That's going to be very, very interesting to see, because if this Alabama team does not come to play, they could be looking at their 3rd loss of the season. All right, guys, that's it for my open. Now, what you really came here for, you want to hear Coach Howell. Here is my conversation I had early on Monday evening with Coach Max Howell. Everybody joining me, as he does every Tuesday throughout the college football season. I am joined by Coach Max Howell, a Troy Sports Hall of Famer, a former Florida State and Ole Miss assistant, and 25-plus years in sports talk radio. And Coach Howell, it's always great to have you on. It's great to have our chats every Monday evening, which people can listen or view this on Tuesday mornings. But interesting Week 10 we're coming out of. And we said that at the end of the show last week. We said probably will be some interesting things to talk about when we got back together this week. But quite interesting weekend, particularly there in the SEC.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt, Phillip. I don't know whether 30 minutes or an hour is going to be enough time for us to cover everything we saw. I mean, it was some highlights, but it was a lot of disappointment. I think we'll touch on those, but of course the 2 big games I think lived up to maybe the expectations not as who won the games, but the play on the field was really outstanding.
Yeah, it was. And as I do every week when I bring you on, just overall, what were your overall takeaways from the weekend?
Well, let's start at Georgia. Georgia by far is better. It's improved. They as good or better than they were last year. The defense has picked it up a step. I think Stetson Bennett's really come to light, and I think he's a legitimate quarterback. Even though he did turn 25 last week, I think I read he's older than 11 starters in the NFL at quarterback. So, but hats off to him. He stayed. He could have come out early, but he stayed and he come back, and he's leading that Georgia team. And they found a way to stop Tennessee's wide open offense. And hats off to him. I think that's I don't know where I'd want to take a team into Atlanta right now to play Georgia. I think they're playing the best football they've played. And of course, the other two big games we saw. Well, really, another one I'll mention first is Florida goes into Texas A&M and wins that ball game. I had no idea that how that was going to turn out. I knew Florida's in the midst of a rebuilding program complete with Coach Napier, and I think they are on the road. But it looks like to me A&M is just about throwing in the towel. Of course, they got to go to Auburn this week, I believe. So that's going to be I think an interesting ball game to say the least. But the two big ones that we watched was Alabama and LSU first and foremost, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Of course, the other was Georgia and Tennessee. But the Alabama-LSU game, Alabama's won that thing, I think, for 5 or 6 in a row. In a contrast to what they did when they went into Knoxville, they beat Tennessee like 15 years in a row. So, I think LSU, to me, was a complete surprise. I watched them. This was the third game I watched them in that opening ball game against FSU, and you could tell they were just now regrouping. They made a lot of mistakes in that ball game. I watched them against Ole Miss, and they got way more physical by the time I saw them against Ole Miss. And of course, yesterday, or Saturday, excuse me, they played very, very well. Well coached, well conceived. I think Alabama has their problems, and I'm not real sure that Bryce Young's completely healthy right now. I don't think he could throw the long ball. He threw that first interception, threw the ball behind the wide receiver, had the 3 or 4 short throws. He threw it to the ground. There's several things there that is not Alabama-like. And of course, not being Alabama-like, LSU came to play. And, you heard me say early on, I was not a Brian Kelly fan. I've watched him for a long time, and I saw Alabama beat him badly 2 times previous to this. And I thought Alabama would take that idea right on into this game, but they were not able to do that. So I think there it lies. The question now is, does Alabama rebound? They got Ole Miss in Oxford this week. And, of course, the last game they got Auburn at home at least. Then they got some out-of-conference game in between. But the bottom line is a great weekend. I'm going to be really interested, Phillip, in watching how Alabama tries to correct their mistakes. I was on the show earlier this morning. I was asked that same question. The show, by the way, in Tuscaloosa. And my opinion is they're going to have to – Alabama better come out and jump on Ole Miss the first 2 or 3 series. They better go up 14-0 in the first half. Because if that's reversed, and Ole Miss, with Lane Kiffin, he's got a good balance run and throw this year. If he gets a touchdown or 2 up, I don't know if Alabama, how their team's going to react. That's never happened to them before, particularly after a loss. Coach Saban usually wins and wins big. So those are all my takes that I came out. I can't go by without mentioning Auburn. I thought they played excellent the second half. I thought they'd given it away pretty much the first half, but they came back, took them to overtime, and got beat. Mississippi State beat them in that last in the first overtime, 39-33. So Auburn fans ought to be happy with what they saw, but still interested in how the coaching search goes. That's going to tell the tale, I think, over the long haul.
Yeah, absolutely. You're just talking about, Auburn, and we'll jump to, I got a few questions on those 2 big games. It's just amazing, just the difference. Obviously Carnell Williams, he's never been a head coach before, and his inexperience showed because I was watching that game along at the same time watching the LSU Alabama game. But just the energy and then just, I don't know, the different kind of enthusiasm. Because with Brian Harsin, you'd watch him on the sideline. He'd just have his arms crossed, no really emotion. I mean, and obviously Carnell Williams, he loves Auburn. I mean, he went to school there. He was one of the all-time great. I don't know. It just felt like there was a different energy around the team, and they found a way to get back in that game. And just the special teams kind of had some issues there, and that's kind of been an issue at Auburn this year. But I don't know, just a difference when you've got a coach over there, very excited, very enthused, very emotional, excited, and I think the players just fed off Carnell's energy on Saturday night.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt, and I think what he did too. I mean, he did what Hartson did. We've talked about that in the last couple of weeks. Turned and handed the ball to Bigsby. He's the best one of the top 2 or 3 best running backs in the country. And Hartzell would never run him. And you saw what he was able to do. I mean, he broke through that line of scrimmage, and he was off to the races more than once. In fact, really a lot attributed to him helped bring him back in that second half. I mean, that's just basic football. But I think Carnell, along with the basis that he installed in just a few days, I think, as you pointed out, the excitement, the enthusiasm on the sideline, up and down. I mean, it was almost like just what it was, an assistant coach becoming the head coach. He was still on the sideline as an assistant coach, grabbing the players and really showing a lot of enthusiasm. So hats off to him. I mean, they enthused the crowd, and they got A&M coming in this week. So what I saw out of A&M, don't be surprised if Auburn walks away with a win in that game.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one because that matchup going into this Saturday, that feels like it's 2 teams that are 3-6, but 2 teams with completely different energies right now because A&M just like a team down in the dumps. I know they were out 12. They were without 12 players due to the flu going around the team. But then you look at Auburn going home because they were in Starkville. You know that crowd is going to be excited for Carnell Williams when he comes out and leads that team out on the field. I just feel like yes, they're both 3-6 and it's a bowl elimination game, I guess you would say, perhaps, but between these 2 teams. But it just feels like it's just 2 different teams going opposite directions from an energy. And it's really, and Coach, it's really amazing, too. Auburn lost that game, but most Auburn fans feel positive coming out of it. It's just an amazing
like
thing.
They won it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think the attitude, if you poll the Auburn fan base right now, is almost like they won. You know what? Think about this, Phillip. I think they did win the emotional battle. And I think that was the whole thing. Did you get the feeling with Hartson there, particularly this year? It was almost like going to a funeral. Mm-hmm. I mean, really, it was just somber, no excitement, nobody jumping up and down, and I think that's what Cadillac brought to them was that emotion, and I think that's was 90% of that comeback that they made in the second half. I think he really pumped them up at halftime and told them, hey, it's, that old story about we got them right where we want them. It was down, boy, by 3 touchdowns. But the fact is they came back and tied it up. And even though they lost the game, I think Auburn fans feel excited about where this team is right now in comparison.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's jump to Tennessee, Georgia. Last week when we talked about this game, we were talking about the over-under being 66, and I know we wrote for kind of like this should go over. They combined for 40 points, so the people who did take the under made some money. Georgia just came out, and I guess Georgia – and I said this on Twitter after the game. I said I guess some Georgia wanted to remind everybody who they were, and they did that on Saturday. And just really, it was just basic. And they dominated up front. I mean, Tennessee, Hendon Hooker got sacked 6 times to false starts, penalties, and all that stuff. But what did you see defensively out of Georgia? I mean, what were they doing to cause some problems for the Tennessee offense?
Well, what they did, they took, a page out of Alabama's book. They brought more than they could block. They brought 5 and 6 a lot of time. That's where the sacks came from. And see, everybody else that played Tennessee up until now wanted to play defense, play drop back and cover defense as opposed to putting pressure. Well, Georgia was smart enough to realize that those wide receivers out there run about 4 threes. And if his defensive backs run 4 5s, they're going to get beat. So he cut the time available for that quarterback to find the wide receiver down by flushing him out of the pocket or obviously getting a hold of him and getting a sack on him. Normally about two and a half seconds, most quarterbacks going to have to get rid of the ball. 3 is that's an extension. But the fact is he didn't have 3 seconds most of the time. Georgia basically mixed up their blitz package. They brought the safeties, they brought the corners, they brought it from all different directions. And I don't think Tennessee saw that. Alabama normally would have done that and did that some, but not to the degree basically that Georgia did. Georgia played well. I mean, they played balance. I was impressed. Let's put it that way. And I'm not. Has never been a real Kirby Smart fan. I mean, you've heard me say before. I think Kirby's recruited players who can overcome his coaching, and I think that was a perfect example Saturday, regardless of how much coaching was done. But I will say this: after doing a little more background, by Kirby Smart's own admission, they started working on Tennessee's offense in the spring, and they worked on it all spring, and they worked it on all 2 days. They knew that was the coming thing that they had to stop, and sure enough, it paid off, and they did it.
Yeah, and the thing about watching that game too, I mean, because they were up 24-3 at halftime. I mean, Tennessee didn't score a touchdown to about around 4 minutes left, but the game was in hand, and it really felt like when the rain started coming down, Georgia just pumped the brakes a little bit. They played ball control offense, which we talked about that last week. They needed to do that, but they really just. I feel like Georgia almost said, "Okay, we could probably make this worse than it is, but we don't want to get any turnovers to let them get back in the game because of the bad weather." And Georgia did have a couple fumbles in the game, but it just kind of felt like at that point, Georgia, our defense has got it. The crowd is giving him problems. Let's just don't do anything to give Tennessee some momentum.
I agree with it. And I think what Kirby did, you're right, he reverted back to old-time football. Play good defense, run the ball, be conservative, don't take many chances, and you're going to win the football game. You may not score a bunch of points, but you're going to win the football game. And that's what he's done. He's got the blueprint now. In all fairness, you go back there and re-watch that ball game under conditions we've seen others play. I think they're playing the best football in the country. I think they could beat Ohio State. They could beat Michigan. I think they could beat either of those teams out there. Clemson eliminated themselves this past weekend with a poor showing against Notre Dame. So, I don't think – I think TCU's going to probably end up because of the losses at the top. They may end up, but TCU can't play with Georgia. I just don't believe it. I don't believe Cincinnati thought they could last year, but they could. They couldn't play. They could play with Alabama. So I just think that I can't wait till the polls come out tomorrow to see, how they missed them 1, 2, 3, 4. But it's going to be interesting, and that's why they play them. That's making, to me, the best teams will end up in the top 4, without a doubt.
All right, kind of looking at the Alabama and the LSU game, the nightcap game, and going in, this was an interesting game going in because LSU had actually not beaten Alabama at home since 2010, and outside of the 2019 game between Alabama and LSU, the Joe Burrow Heisman year, I mean, LSU had really struggled against Alabama. They hadn't beaten them all that often here lately. It's been a while outside of that game since LSU has beaten them, and they did a really good job. The LSU defense did a good job holding that Alabama offense down. Only 9 points going into the fourth quarter. It was 14-9 LSU advantage, and then Bryce Young having issues, 25 of 51 at 49%, sacked twice, constant pressure on him. I think, for me, Coach, I came out of this game looking at the LSU defense, and everybody was going to talk about the offense, Jaden Daniels, the big runs, the big throws he made. That LSU defense really, really gave Alabama problems.
I don't think there's any doubt, and I thought they put a spy on Bryce Young when he tried to run the football. I still think he's hurt. I think he can't throw the long ball. But I'm going to tell you something that slips by, and very few people have talked about it. Right after Coach Kelly got there was an exodus of those kids. He only had 39 players for spring training, scholarship players. Now, he went out and found, he went out and they had gone through recruiting, and they had three freshmen starting on the offense, 2 tackles and that big wide receiver that caught the extra point, 2-point conversion that won the game. So I think he's done a remarkable job way better than I had ever anticipated, to tell you the truth. But they had a great game plan for Alabama, and they won the ball game. I think here's when I really knew it was over. When it took Alabama 6 plays to get a touchdown in overtime, and LSU got that touchdown the first snap. And then, of course, they came back with 2-point conversion. A great call, a mismatch there, a 6'4" wide receiver runs a flat route, and the guy that's trying to cover him out there as a corner was about 5'11". So, I mean, he had a size on him. And I haven't run it back yet, but I guarantee you that had the coverage been on the tight end there, I believe Daniels could have stepped in the end zone by running it, because he was already outside containment when he threw the ball. So well-conceived game plan and executed excellent, and LSU comes away with a big win.
Yeah, because I had, as I told you earlier, I was watching, because I got 2 TVs in my room where I'm set up, where I'm watching the games on Saturdays. So I had the Auburn Mississippi State game on, but I had the other one on there too as well. And I'll let everybody know I had the Alabama LSU game muted, and I had the announcers for the other game going. So I kind of glanced over there when I saw when he scored that touchdown, which was greatly blocked when you look at it from the receivers and the running backs to get them in there.
That's right.
But when I saw that he kept the offense, I said, Brian Kelly's about to go for it. I was like, wow, he's really going that. Just when that was going on live, what was going through your mind when the LSU offense was still out there and he was going to go for the 2 to win the game?
Well, as soon as they left it, I saw they didn't bring the extra point guy out right away. I figured it right quick what they were going to do. I didn't know what play they was going to run, but I felt, because remember Alabama, how unprepared they were? They had 12 men on the field. I mean, you remember that defensive back, instead of stepping out of the back in the end zone, he ran all the way across the field. Had they snapped the ball, that would have been a penalty. It would have been, first and goal at the 1.5-yard line. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it was win-win for LSU in every aspect there. So, I've talked to a couple of LSU fans today that called, and certainly I had to give them credit. I mean, they were well prepared. And I think better prepared than Alabama was. Why Alabama would not put a spy on Daniels and every time he breaks out the pocket, have somebody, a linebacker, chasing him down, I don't know. That to me, that just shows not as thorough preparation as Alabama has done before, and we're accustomed to watching Alabama play. There was several breakdowns. The right tackle, he got beat inside. I don't know how many times. I think he had 3 or 4 holding penalties because he can't move his feet. That's the Latham kid. Now he's 6'5", he's 320, and he may be good putting his hand on the ground and knocking somebody off, but pass blocking, we've changed that for next week against Ole Miss.
Yeah, and it's just, you look at Alabama, and this is 2 losses, and this is not something they're used to. They're not used to be eliminated, basically.
That's right.
Before Thanksgiving. I mean, the last time they had 2 losses in the regular season, 2019, they lost to Auburn in the Iron Bowl at the end. That was their second loss of the year. And then before that, we're looking at 2010 when they lost 3 games, when they lost to South Carolina, LSU, and then they did lose to Auburn in the Iron Bowl. So this is uncharted territory for them. But for you watching this team play, and really they could be 5-4. The Texas game and the A&M game goes slightly different. A play here, a play there. They could be a 5-4 team, which you could also say play here, play there. They could be undefeated. I know that too. But this team is just not the same. It's just not the Alabama team you're used to seeing. What do you see as the issues with this team and why this came? Because coming to the year, they were ranked number 1. Everybody said this is one of the most talented Alabama teams ever. Everybody expect them to win the national championship this year. For you, what has gone wrong with this team?
I tell you what I really do believe. Coach Saban, if you follow him and listen to his press conference and all, he is really big on individual preparation. How, make yourself better, make yourself valuable. And a lot of I don't go to practice. Nobody does on the outside of the staff. And this is just an assessment based on 30 years on the football field. But the fact is, it's all that. Here's another thing: that you only have 2 hours on the practice field. You got 20 hours a week to make this thing work. And that being the case, if he spends that much time working individual, when did they do teamwork? Look, you can't create leadership doing one-on-one drills. Teamwork's got to come out of half-line scrimmages or pass scale where you're going your offense, your wide receivers, your backs, or a goal line work scrimmage segment of your practice sessions every day. So I think that might be one of them. He doesn't have any leaders that have stepped up, and when things are going bad, can take control of the team that's on the field. Coaches can jump up and down and holler and scream all they want to, and that includes Coach Saban, but that doesn't carry. Those kids, that just like pouring water on a duck's back. What gets their attention is one of their own grabs a hold of them on that football field. It jacks them around a little bit. They get the message then. So, and I didn't see that one time with Alabama's team this year. They don't have it doing that. So I don't know. I think Coach Saban's going to have to reevaluate. The play calling. We all know Bill O'Brien's an NFL guy. Alabama started 3 times, on the 10-yard line at the beginning of the ball game. They don't have one running back, and that's the Gibbs kid that's been effective. They got a couple of more, but they've not been very effective. So I just think there's a whole. I don't think you put your finger, Phillip, on one thing. It's called. I think it's a whole concept that they're working under right now. And you let them lose one more, I tell you, there's going to be some folks hollering and screaming because of what Alabama's done and created the atmosphere that they have around that program and been successful as they have. This, as you just pointed out, this was the year they're supposed to. Last year was a rebuilding year by everybody's admission. Well, they rebuilt, and evidently they didn't do a good enough job because there were some glaring mistakes made on that playing field Saturday night. And I think it started with Tennessee. I think Tennessee presented an offense for them, that they were unfamiliar with, and then I think it carried over to what happened at LSU.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, there's going to be a lot of eyeballs on the Ole Miss game. I'm just interested. How does Alabama respond? I mean, this team was built up to be a national championship contender, and now that's pretty much out the window unless you have certain Alabama fans. There's folks are trying to figure out a way where they can still get the playoff, but it ain't going to happen. But
no, that's right. No way.
Oh,
I mean, there's never been a two-loss team in the playoff. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. What I'm concerned for them is, if they lose another one, they may just roll it up. You know what I mean? That kids just, we've seen them before a few years back when they didn't get there. When they had the bowls, when basically the top teams went to the top bowls and it got overlooked. And was it Utah they played? It got beat by Utah, I believe, a few years back. And the fact is, they said, well, our team just weren't into it. They thought they should have been playing for a national championship, and they weren't. So I just wonder if they're that fragile emotionally on the inside that whatever Coach Saban presents to them this week, because Ole Miss, they don't have the talent level that Alabama's got, but I'm going to tell you, they'll throw the football. He'll gamble. He'll go for it on 4th down on his own 20. It doesn't matter to him. Lane Kiffin he's a riverboat gambler if there ever was one. So I'll be really interested in watching that ball game. And I think if Alabama's going to win it, like I said before, they're going to have to show something the first couple of series to get their confidence back.
And real quickly, before I let you go, LSU, of course, them going forward, and now they do go to Arkansas this Saturday. And I was telling somebody, yes, I know Arkansas is 5-4, and they just lost to Liberty 21-19. But still, I kind of want to look at those situations, especially when a team like LSU wins a big game like this. I mean, everybody's going to be telling them how good they are for all week long. How Brian Kelly, he has taken them. He's really playing with house money too, just what they're doing, and they're pretty much. They're not locked in, but they are the driver's seat for the SEC West right now. As long as they don't lose to somebody they shouldn't lose to, they should be in Atlanta, obviously playing Georgia. I think this is a sneaky game, and I want to see how LSU responds to this. I mean, what are your thoughts on them going forward, for that game this Saturday against Arkansas and just for the rest of the season?
Well, Arkansas has been hit with a bunch of injuries. That's one thing. They don't have a lot of depth, much like Ole Miss. I think LSU talent-wise, the difference in LSU and some teams is that they play tough. They play tough physical football, much like Georgia's doing on the defensive side, particularly. It's consequently you can get your emotions up to play hard note where you just put your hand in the ground and knock somebody out of the way. That's pretty easy to maintain. But where a team like Alabama has drifted over toward finesse, excuse me, and they have to really provide an offensive scheme for them to operate in. Those are the ones that have a hard time because that's all mental. I mean, if you're confused at all about what your assignment is, then you don't play very well. I look for LSU to come back and play just as hard. As they got Arkansas and I think UAB and the Texas A&M. So I think they went out. To tell you the truth, particularly with those three competitors.
Yeah, I do too. It's just I always look at that kind of situation because sometimes I think some people forget these are 18 to 22, 23-year-olds.
That's right.
Or 25-year-old in Stetson Bennett's case. I saw, you brought that up, and I did see something the other day. And Hendon Hooker is 24. So they had two pro-age quarterbacks playing.
That's right. Yeah.
And I think I saw someone put up that Joe Burrow, who's now in his third year in the NFL, he is the same age as Stetson Bennett.
That's right. Yep. So anyway, it's a great weekend. But I think the question that you posed for tonight, it really is what we need to build on over the next 3 weeks, because it is okay. This is what happened this week. Does that signify what they're going to be? Does Georgia keep rolling? Can Tennessee rebound? What about Alabama? Are they going to win out? Or are they going to fold up? And then what about LSU? And then, of course, I guess my prejudice is in favor of just watching Texas A&M. I don't believe I've ever seen a program at that level unfold as bad as that one has. I mean, it's last week they said, okay, they had 12 players out. So what? I mean, you basically when you recruit at a high level with like the number one recruited class they had this past year, you better have players that can fill in, even though they might be freshmen that can come in and play. LSU remember they had 3 starters on the offensive freshmen. Two of those 2 tackles just were in high school last year, and they did a pretty good job against Alabama's defensive front. Mm-hmm. So, I don't buy too much just because you got an injury or two that you ought to lose a ball game. So, I think all that being said, we got another weekend coming up, and I can't wait.
Yeah, I can't either. I can't wait. And then next week we'll talk about, I'm sure some interesting stuff will happen this weekend in the conference and in college football as a whole. And, Coach, it's fun doing this with you every Monday night. And, of course, everybody listen to it and viewing it on Tuesdays. I do appreciate you coming on here once again, and I look forward to talking to you again next week.
I'll be right here. Thank you so much, Phil. Always my pleasure.
All right, everybody. And once again, it's always great to talk to Coach Max Howell about what's going on in the SEC. He watches all these games, his knowledge from coaching, being in sports talk radio, being a player. And always great to have his insight here on the podcast on Tuesdays, on the show on Tuesdays, to talk about all that good stuff. Now, as I said, coming on at the beginning of the show, SEC basketball got started on Monday night. Now, look, we're not going to go over every single game, and we're not going to do that over each show. I'm not going to do that, especially while we are still in the midst of football season. But it was opening out. I want to go over what happened. Now, I did watch the Auburn-George Mason game, number 15. Auburn won 70-52 in that one. Just some takeaways from it. The guard play for Auburn, obviously, Wendell Green and Katie Johnson are second team preseason SEC selections. And without Jabari Smith and Walker Kessler there up front, I was really intrigued to see how does that play out. How does this team look with those two guys on your front line? That was your center and your power forward. How those things work out. Now, the guards. Wendell Green had 16 points. Katie Johnson had 12. and they brought Katie Johnson off the bench, and I actually like that. I like because of the energy he can bring. And Auburn did the crowd at Neville Arena at Auburn, very electric, very passionate. It was a good crowd for Auburn there in that game. And defensively, they played really, really well. Great energy defensively. They created a lot of turnovers, transition points. They're really good on the boards, especially offensively. 22 offensive rebounds in the game for Auburn. 10 blocks in the game as well, so they're able to supplement that in this game for what they lost with Walker Kessler. But they did not shoot good at all in this game. And I listened to some interviews with Bruce Pearl coming into the season. That was obviously a concern of his, and they're going to have to get better at that because they were 24 of 71 for 34% overall. 71 shots, a lot. They shot a whole lot more than George Mason because you were trading turnovers. You got a lot more possessions in the offensive rebounds. 425 from three. 2 of those threes came from Katie Johnson. Got to get better there. I mean, they don't have to be the greatest three-point shooting team in the country because what they can play defensively, if they can rebound like this, and just what they can create in transition, especially when they're at home. But they're going to get better. They're going to hit some more shots because teams are just going to be able to defend them a certain way. Lay back and let them shoot that. Now, I think they've got some good mid-range jump shooters there, but they need to improve in that category. They do have the transfer from Morehead State, Johnny Broome. He had 4 blocks in the day, 12 points. It looked like he may be taking on a little bit of that role, replacing what they lost with Kessler and Jabari Smith. But those are huge shoes to fill. They got good players. This is a good Auburn team, but the shooting right now is kind of my concern. They don't need great shooting. They need average shooting. And we'll see how that progresses. It's the first game, not overreacting to it. Not going to get on here and say Auburn's overrated. Maybe they shouldn't have been picked 4th in the SEC going into the season. But I'm just saying that's from what I saw in game 1, the shooting just was not there, and that needs to improve. The other ranked teams in the SEC, Kentucky defeated Howard. Number 4, Kentucky defeated Howard 95-63. A couple of transfers had some big games here. Illinois State transfer Antonio Reeves had 22 points. He was 6 of 12. From 3, of course, at Illinois State last year, he averaged 20 points per game. And then C.J. Frederick, Iowa transfer, didn't play last year because of an ankle injury. He had 20 points. Of course, Oscar Tshiebwe did not play the National Player of the Year last year. He had knee surgery. There was hope maybe he would be back for the opener. That didn't happen. They were also without Wheeler, the point guard, and Damian Collins. Without personal reason, Wheeler was out due to a leg injury. Tennessee defeated Tennessee Tech 75-43. UT struggled a little bit in the first half of this one. They were up 27-16 in the first half. Indiana State transfer Tyreek Key had 17 points off the bench. He was 4 for 8 from downtown. North Dakota State and number 16 Arkansas. Arkansas wins that one 76-58. Mizzou transfer Trevon Brazile had 21 points and 12 rebounds in the game. Alabama, number 20 in the country, defeated Longwood 75-54. Freshman Brandon Miller and Rylan Griffin led the way. Both had 14 points apiece. Miller had 13 rebounds. But kind of going back to Auburn, Alabama struggled from 3, going 3 for 28, but they did rebound the ball really well, 67-38. And just looking around the rest of the conference, Mississippi State defeated Texas A&M Corpus Christi 63-44. Memphis defeated Vanderbilt 76-67. Texas A&M defeated Louisiana Monroe 87-54. Missouri defeated Southern Indiana 97-91. So very entertaining game there. Georgia defeated Western Carolina 68-55. Florida defeated Stony Brook 81-45. And Ole Miss defeated Alcorn State 73-58. And kind of tying things back up into college football, I went on Facebook and I asked for some takeaways from the weekend college football, SEC, whatever's on your mind, college football related. Eddie James said Jimbo overpaid. He is, but they can't get rid of him, so they got stuck with him. Destin Baker, looks like Saban has lost his passion. I don't necessarily think that. They just got some issues, Alabama, that they have to clean up. And just like I said with their coach, and I've been saying this since the Texas game, especially since the Tennessee game, that Alabama struggles away from Bryant Denny. And that's something they need to fix, and to fix it this week because they got to go to Oxford. Rhett Baxley asked or said, how can I ask this question? How can Georgia, with similar talent to Alabama, make Tennessee offense look silly and Bama could not stop them? Well, Jalen Carter for number one on the defensive line. The Georgia defensive line dominated. I think, and you heard Coach talk about this a little bit. Alabama played back on the Tennessee receivers. They basically let them run straight through. I think Georgia was more aggressive with the Tennessee receivers. I think that had a lot to do with it. I think it's just decision making, and you have a guy like Jalen Carter up front, and then you've got the different, I guess, strategies, philosophies they went with defending the receivers in the secondary. And then Jeremy Grace, Alabama, Auburn, UAB went 0-3 in overtime games this week. That is true. And also, South Alabama had a 38-31 victory, and then Troy had to fight back. They were down 17-0 against Lafayette, and they came out and went 23-17. So close games everywhere in the state of Alabama this past weekend. And that is going to do it for today's show. Appreciate Coach Howell, as always, for coming on the show. Please, I am really trying to push the YouTube channel. So anybody listening to this may be seeing less audio postings and much more video posting. Because I can make more money doing YouTube than I can just doing the podcast audio. So it's really trying to grow that. I got 39 subscribers on my YouTube channel. Trying to grow that. Right now, I would love, I don't think this is a big ask, but I would love to have 11 new subscribers by the end of the year. We just hit November. If I could get to 50 by the end of the year, I would be pretty happy. So only 11 more. So please, let people know, share it out. Share out the YouTube channel, Phillip Jordan. Really, that's what we're trying to do here. Only going to do 2 of these a week now here on the channel. Now, that for people that subscribe, the Coach Max Howell conversation and any of the SEC conversations will be on the Talking SEC feed as well. I know some people just only want to hear me with talking SEC stuff, which is what's all SEC on this show. But that will be on that feed as well. But I really hope people would come to the YouTube channel and check it out. And I'll be focusing on more Southeast sports here on the show. Obviously, college football, college basketball. We'll talk some pro teams, but they will mostly reside in Southeast. I will let people know when we get to the NFL playoffs. I will have someone on once a week breaking out the NFL playoff games. Obviously, even if there's not a Southeast team. But trying to stay more focused in that, probably do some local stuff here in the Wiregrass too. But that's kind of what the channel's going to be doing. But I hope people will check it out. Like I said, want to get to 50. That's kind of like the goal for the channel. And anyway, so please check it out. Phillip Jordan, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and please leave a comment on stuff that really would appreciate it. If you do that, head over. If you're on listening to the podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review. Leave a review. I will read it on a future edition of the show as well. And please don't leave 4 stars. You're just a hater if you do that. Leave 5 stars. I'd rather leave 1 than the 4, because 4 is just you trolling me, I feel like. Anyways. And you can email me, sports.phillipjordan@gmail.com. I hope everyone has a great week. We'll be back on Thursday. 2 guests on Thursday. Matt Lowe, obviously. He will come on. We'll be previewing the weekend of games. And I'll be talking with an Auburn writer. I'll just wait, let you guys see who that's going to be. Somebody I've never had on any of my shows before. So before you say, oh, well, we know who it is if you're talking Auburn, it's probably Justin Ferguson, which I hadn't had him on forever, or Zach Blackerby. No, somebody brand new. Talk all things Auburn. But anyways, guys, I hope you all have a fantastic early part of the week. Go check out the Wiregrass High School Football Report. Posted one up on that one on Monday. Check that out. Of course, here on the channel, you will see the Jed Kennedy Coaches Show on Thursday night. It will pop up on here as well, previewing their playoff game with Auburn High Tigers. They're coming up this Friday night that you can listen to on 96.9 The Legend. And also check out all my written work over on Last Word on college football. All right, guys, I'm going to get on out of here. Until next time, bye-bye.